true.
For me. And what are you doing at?
I work in the art department at the university, in the office.
We have an art department now? I thought it got washed away.
No, it's pretty big.
Okay.
Art history and studio art.
Do you know a girl named Whitney Randall? My son just started dating her. She's in theater and art and everything.
Oh,
I'm just very excited. He needs a good girlfriend.
Oh.
How old are you?
I'm 26.
You're
26.
perfect. Are you married, engaged, or anything?
Yeah, I have a serious boyfriend.
Dump him. No, see, that's a good-looking guy right there. No, yeah, he just got a girlfriend. We're just thrilled because for the last 3 years he's been absolutely a monk because he has the tendency to attract crazy women. And he got burned the last 3 relationships he's had. So he's a nice, sane, pretty, witty, funny woman who has a job that makes her more money than he does, and that's great.
Does your son live here?
Yeah, they both my kids live in Iowa City now,
Oh, nice.
and he works at Hills Bank,
Okay.
and she works at Best Buy in the National Guard,
Oh, cool.
and she just finished her Army training,
Really?
throwing grenades, dodging bullets. Where did that come from?
And she's married, right?
She is married to a Republican conservative Johnson County cop. I don't understand. God, where did we go wrong? But
Has he read your book?
he has. He's actually the exception. He's a very smart Johnson County Republican conservative deputy sheriff. And he's a very bright guy. And he likes my daughter. So, that's fine. She likes him. He's 6'4", she's 4'11". She's Korean, he's Irish, and it'll be great. So they both live in town, and they endure their parents because we embarrass them.
That's kind of a role of parents, right?
Yeah, but we embarrass them in a way that in high school, throughout high school, all the other kids would come here and stay here overnight, and they would say, we just think your parents are so funny. Your parents are so much fun. And we were hard-nosed, we take off your hat. You sit at the table, straighten up. Use the, here's how you hold a fork. We're a bit anal retentive and controlling, but evidently nobody taught them how to eat food. So our kids' friends still like us, as a matter of fact. Okay. I can talk about anything. So you're going to have to focus this if you want something coherent.
No, this is good.
Yeah, that is good.
Now, how far are you in Flamingo?
I'm about 90 to 70 pages away from the end. So.
Oh, so you've gone through like the couple of the fires of the funeral home, Frank the dog,
Frank
Alice,
the dog.
Sex on the Beach.
I think that I'm just about to get to the Sex on the Beach. Oh, I'm in the chapter about the woman that died on the toilet.
True story.
Yeah.
I did
What?
that.
Really?
Yeah, I picked a woman up off the toilet and carried her back to her car.
Did it happen the same way as in
Basically, it
Flamingo?
was Oklahoma. It was she was by herself. We were playing an awful movie, that Diary of a Mad Housewife, an awful drive-in movie.
It was the same movie.
Oh yeah, Flamingo is full of stories. I used to tell out loud about my past, and that was the original intent of the book, just string those together. And then I put it away for 10 years when I realized that I didn't like the narrator, because the narrator was the father. But as soon as I changed the narrator to the son, I figured out the book is not really about the father at all. It's about the son and his relationship to being Korean in this weird Southern Gothic world growing up. And I started this book before I adopted my kids, and once we had 5 or 6 years of raising kids who don't look like us, but then they start acting like us, we get a little scared. And then I figured out what the book was about, this nature-nurture conflict. What is the nature of a child, and how much power does his parents really have over him or her? because you see it every day with adopted children. Everything bad about my children, it's biology. It's somebody else's fault. Anything good, of course, it's my wife and I were wonderful parents. With that line about where, she's talking about, now, do your children, they have southern accents, and the mother points out, well, they are from South Korea. That's a line directly from our life when people are at dinner. Now, do they speak English? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they talk like us, but they're from South Korea. And the people, oh yeah, that makes sense. So those sorts of stories get thrown. The dead woman on the toilet, the setting the funeral home on fire with the fireworks, selling sex education books, birth of triplets. That's all stuff I did in the movie business. And I used to run the world's biggest drive-in theater.
Really?
Where was
in
that?
Oklahoma?
Tulsa, Oklahoma. I have pictures. Stay here.
Wow, I have so many questions.
I know. Me too.
And none of them are on these 3 pieces of paper.
I know it. I was going to ask him about autobiography, but I'll wait until he...
This does not convey the real size of this drive-in theater.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
That's literally as big as a building.
You could live in that. Did
Yes.
it have an inside?
It had an enormous space inside, and there's a ladder that went. The scene where they're going up the ladder and Frank's chasing them. There's a ladder in there that goes straight to the top, and I used to go to the top of the drive-in all the time. It's about 200 feet wide and maybe 100 feet tall, and it actually burned down about 2 years ago, and they rebuilt it. Metal.
Wait, and you lived in there?
No, but as I ran that theater,
Yeah.
and I kept imagining people living in it.
Because there's a tower, I just imagined it looking different. Is this what you imagined when you were describing in Flamingo Rising?
Well, the difference being that this is a 2-screen theater.
Oh, okay.
There are screens on both sides of this. They're two separate fields.
Right.
Oh.
Okay.
There's
and
1,000
just a
cars
one.
on one side and 800 cars on the other side.
Oh
Two
my
separate
God.
concession stands. But all of that, the literal description of the theater comes from that one.
But wasn't there an Eiffel Tower or something? Did I misread it?
I doubt it. I didn't get that far. I'm only as far as where the African American man showed up.
Oh,
And wanted to put his
you
trailer
did not
on.
get very far.
No, I didn't.
Here's the the Hallmark scrapbook from the movie version.
Oh, cool.
Oh.
Wow.
And
Oh my
there's
gosh.
one of the marquees,
Okay.
Elizabeth McGovern. The only reason to watch this movie is because of her.
I was going
Okay.
to ask you how you felt about the casting. Oh.
Here's the thing. He was okay.
Who is?
William Hurt? Or-
Brian Benben.
Oh, okay.
What did he play?
He played the father.
Oh, okay.
He's only about 5 feet tall.
Okay.
She played the mother, and it's like perfection. I mean, I've watched that movie and I thought, I want to come out of your womb. I want you to be my mother. You are just perfect. She's a great. They got amateurs here. It was awful. This kid had never acted before, but he was Korean. This girl here, as Louise, was Korean. No, was Japanese and Caucasian. And Hallmark people say, "Oh, it's no big deal." I mean,
But she doesn't. She doesn't look Korean.
well, not only that, I pointed out to them that no, it makes a big difference. The Japanese and Koreans hate each other. They don't like each other.
Yeah.
So
that's
casting
true.
a Japanese actress, well, nobody's in Korea. Anyway. William Hurt's probably who you're thinking of. He played Turner West.
Okay.
Oh, the funeral director?
Yeah, and he's
Okay.
Turner West is a secondary role, right? Mm-hmm. As soon as he arrived on the set, from what I heard from this crew later, the script revisions sort of inflated his role.
Because they wanted to make him a bigger.
Yeah.
He wanted to make himself a bigger
And the
probably.
thing is, I know the screenwriter for the Hallmark movie. he was very unhappy with the final version. He said, that movie had nothing to do with your book or my script. They totally ignored my script. And this is Judge Harry Lester.
Oh, no way.
I wanted Harry Dean Stanton to play that role.
Okay.
Oh, is that on? Because maybe you should show, because people might have the same reactions you do, like who
Oh,
have
yeah.
seen the movie.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
What, Samson? Don't watch the movie. It's crap.
Isn't that always the way, though? Almost
Well,
always.
no writer likes the adaptation of his or her story. This was a badly made movie. Continuity was bad. They missed characters' names. There were scenes where the crowd in the background is hamming it up for the camera, and you edit that out. And you know they did the bad job of. Anyway, read the book. The kids. It's filmed in St. Augustine.
Right.
Flagler College.
Wow.
And this is where
beautiful.
Harry is, Judge Lester is flying around dropping stuff over St. Augustine. That's the litter from the plane they
Oh, really?
dropped over there.
Did you get to that part? They drop all these like pamphlets advertising the movie, and then he gets in trouble.
No, I didn't get that
This
part.
is in the church there. Him outside the wall. Some of the crew.
Oh, she looks
Her
really
in the
pretty.
plane. You haven't. Neither one of you finished the book.
I haven't finished it.
Neither one of you have seen the movie.
We haven't seen the movie.
Okay, we have to be very careful about revealing too much.
Yeah, I'm just finishing the toilet part. That's a really crazy
I'm
story.
very proud of that.
And I'm just at the part where, what is his name?
Pete.
Pete comes
comes
along
along.
and asks if he can put the trailer on their property. He just hires him, so I'm not very
The
far.
caboose.
Yeah, his caboose.
Hey, it's you.
Me and Brendan, yeah.
Were you on the set very much?
I got to own there one time. That's a long story. This was the premiere in Hollywood when they actually showed it in a movie theater a week before it showed on television. And just the kids, my daughter, and everything.
Wow.
It was very nice. The kids, they're impressed because they got to meet like real stars. Brian Binman is married to Madeline Stowe. You know who she is? Look her
I
up.
do.
She was in Last of the Mohegans.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
She's about 6 foot, and he's about, but she's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. But my son was impressed because he got to meet Kyle Spiner, the guy that played Data on Star Trek: Next Generation.
Yeah.
Spiner, this one.
Yeah.
Who's a friend of the director's, and he showed up at the premiere, and my son, totally oblivious, unimpressed with everything I've ever done. Ben, how would you like to meet? He thought that made me legitimate in his eyes. That's a long discussion of something. You didn't even ask a question, did you?
Yeah, we were kind of excited about that.
Yeah. No, we have questions, but
All right, Facebook has a lot of other pictures. If you go to my photo albums,
Oh, okay.
under the LB album,
Okay.
there's pictures of the Admiral Drive-In. There are also pictures of the Winchester Drive-In, which is literally next door to a funeral home in Oklahoma City, and that's where a lot of my stories come from as well. So I've
and
combined-
that's the one that you owned.
I just manage them.
Okay.
I have kind of an sort of off-topic question, but I was wondering, because so many of your characters seem very autobiographical, if you've thought about writing
Who?
an autobiography.
Who?
Well, the person in Athens and...
Well,
Well, that was clearly based upon
but
the-
also Flamingo. I mean, a lot of these stories come from
the
your own
father,
life.
the crazy, demented father. But when you get right down to it,
Wait, what about the crazy demented
what
father?
you'll discover about that father is he's not a nice person. And I'm nicer than the father in that. But yeah, I used to run drive-ins, and I used to like wear costumes, and I did wear a pirate costume, and I did stand and sell popcorn, and I did go car door to car door selling sex education books.
So why didn't you make the father a nicer person?
Because what happens is even though you're taking your own experience, very early in the writing process, the character becomes separated from you. I mean, you're still controlling the character, but the character is also an individual person. And what I started to perceive that character doing, this is, the rewrites, was, oh, this is a guy who's insecure, and he's petty, and he's vindictive. He's very flamboyant. He adores his children. He adores his wife, but he's much too jealous, and that leads to a lot of, as you finish the book, you'll see where that jealousy leads to a lot of problems.
I'm starting to pick up on that.
Yeah. And so I'm able to, any writer is able to like use his own experience. Hell, I'll turn you all into characters, and separate yourself. I can't really write a memoir because that requires a certain amount of honesty, and I don't want to do that.
So you're kind of like an actor. You'd rather take on a role or
Oh,
write
absolutely.
about a role.
Yeah.
Do you have an outline when you start of your characters, and then they kind of just grow into themselves, or?
I have an outline of a plot. The characters developed, and I hate this word, organically. They really do evolve on their own. It's a sucky word.
Why do you hate that word?
Because
In a town like IOC.
I have a PhD in English. I study literature and all this jargon that goes with the academics of studying literature. And so I'm overly self-conscious about the fact that, yeah, I know how this all works, but I don't want to represent the academics of writing. Even though if you read A Good Man, which is my favorite book of all my books, it is the most academic book you will ever read. And the way this book is brilliant is that it's hidden. But that is a book that could only be written by a PhD in English.
What do you mean exactly by academic?
The book is grounded in allusions to other literature. It takes on certain critical approaches of literature that become manifested in the plot of the book. For example, nobody reads T.S. Eliot anymore, but T.S. Eliot has an essay called The Tradition and Individual Talent, in which he argues that all literature is basically springs from other literature. Now I sound like a professor. All literature springs from other literature. So, and as soon as it evolves, it also alters the prior literature. The heritage of, especially the Western literature, is organic. And as soon as it grows, it alters your perception of what came before. Everything in A Good Man is based upon other literature. The character is a combination of two outside literary sources. The theme of the book is about this character trying to find himself in a story, and yet he himself is the story that he's trying to find. You don't understand, it's a Harry Chapin character from a song and a Flannery O'Connor character from a short story, and I put them together and made them a completely new character. And by the end of the book, the end of that character's life, the end of the book, is literally a paragraph from Flannery O'Connor in a completely new context of my story, and yet nobody knows this except I had to get permission from the Flannery O'Connor publisher to do it. But the language there is the absolute perfect ending to a story written by somebody else based upon that exact story that Flannery O'Connor. That's why it's an academic book, and it's the most tightly woven book of. Every chapter is connected to another chapter, and so by the time you get to the end, you'll have to read it on your own. But to me, it's a. And I'm completely objective and neutral. I don't have any. It's a brilliant book. Flamingo is not a brilliant book. It's a well-written book. Parts of it just break your heart. I mean, I read parts of it the other night. I cried help. I cried. And I remember when I wrote those sections, I cried when I wrote them. I didn't cry at Oh Good Man, but I just had enormous pleasure of seeing how, you know how you have a sheet of clear plastic and you draw on it, and you take another cell of clear plastic and lay it over, and you can see that what's below and
Work on top of it.
Right, and it's like two different pictures, but it's the same picture now. A Good Man is like 30 of those cells put on top of each other, and you can lift one off, and they're all individual pictures, but you put them all together. It's one, ready for it? Organic piece of writing. It's a great book, and nobody, we probably sold less than 1,000 copies. It's a real disappointment in sales, but I think it's a brilliant book. Flamingo is everybody's favorite. It gets taught in high school. The kids get upset with the sex. No, they like the sex on the beach. They just don't like who Abe has sex with.
I haven't gotten to that part yet. But I think I know who.
Well, I read on Goodreads that it was banned from some book clubs.
Because of the sex on the beach.
And everybody's like, why was this banned? I mean, some people were.
Well,
Sex
when
on
you
the
get to
beach,
that,
really?
it's a pretty good scene. It's a scene that I've never been able to read at a reading because it gives away too much of the plot. But I'd love to be in a room of just people who have read the book and read that scene. It's sex without body parts, but it's as women more than guys are just slugs anyway. But women more than men say it's like, oh, it is the sensation of sex without bodies. That's what you have to look forward to. And I may have you say, oh, this is it? Ugh, phew. Who knows?
What does your wife think of that scene?
Oh, she likes that scene.
Does she?
I like that. The sex in this book is much more graphic. There are actually bodies
Well,
in this
because
one.
in Flamingo Rising, you don't, from the narrator, who is Abe's point of view, he doesn't swear ever. He right? And that was, why did you decide to do that?
Well, this is another reason it's taught in high schools. Teachers love it because there's no profanity. There's not a damn in the book.
Were you thinking of that?
Absolutely intentional. And because I wanted to have a very repressed character. Because about 150 pages into the writing of it, I figured out that he's hiding something, even from me. Because if you read The Flamingo, it's a very, I hope, a funny story. It's humorous.
Yeah.
But he's not a humorous person. He's a very sad person, telling a very funny story. And what I had to figure out is, why is he so sad? And when it hit me, I literally stopped writing for about a month. Because I knew that what was going to come was me having to write towards the explanation of his voice. Now, if you look at the book, the first and last chapters are both titled Abraham's Voice. I mean, that was my title for the book. The agent changed it and sold it and didn't tell me. And all right, I cashed the check. But he's very repressed, and I just had to figure out what was he repressing. And you, even though you're 70 pages from the end, have not got to the point where you understand.
No, the characters are still evolving for sure.
And you know all about Alice and Polly.
Alice was just coming into the picture, I think, when I was reading.
Well, she turned out to be the major character other than Abe, but she wasn't in the book to begin with. I'd gone about 140 or 50 pages, and then an agent called me from New York who had read a short story in which this Alice was a character, and said, if you have a novel with Alice in it, I can sell it. And I said, "Oh yeah, I got one right here, right here." Hung up. I said, "Jesus." That scene where Abe walks in and sees Polly bending over the popcorn popper. Mm-hmm. That scene was written without Alice in it.
Oh, okay.
And I went back and put her in it, and then had to do a little signal. If you notice, up until that point, she's not a character. She's mentioned.
Right.
And that's just the revision process. Well, Alice is coming, or Alice did this. But as soon as she is in the scene, then her character sort of takes over the story.
Was she based on a true person?
Not really. I used to think it was, but the more I got to understand about this other person, I've created something that is actually better than that other person. But it's evolved. And when you get to this one of the characters named is Alice. It's not the same Alice. So I just realized I got tired of the name Alice. So one of the characters says to the other ones about her name, "Alice is such a cliche. We all think we're Alice." Yeah, anyway, so I promised myself I'd never write about an Alice ever again. Although, when you get to A Good Man, have you read A Good Man?
No, I haven't. I think I started the first page and then I was like, I have to finish Flamingo.
Okay, in A Good Man, goes back to the academic thing, Alice shows up again. Polly shows up again. Pete, the black guy, shows up again. Dexter, the son. Abe and Louise and Grace come back in to A Good Man, but 40 years later. They're pushing 60. And Pete's pushing 100. But it goes back to one of the things I was trying to do with A Good Man. Why it's so good, it's like I'm combining characters from different stories in a completely new story that's absolutely consistent with their other story. And yet there's a point in the book where one of the characters dies, I'll tell you who, and Harry, my main character, wants to go to the funeral because he's in love with this character in the book. And if you pay attention to the cemetery quarrel in Flamingo, the land for the cemetery, it exists in A Good Man. So Harry goes to this funeral, and Pete, at the last seconds, walks up and shuts the gate on him and says, "I'm sorry, Mr. Ducharme, you're not part of this story." He never figures out all of these characters show up for a funeral from Flamingo, and he's always been kept at a distance. So the idea that each story builds on another story, and Harry wants to understand himself in the context of a story, not understanding that the story he wants to understand is his own story, fabricated out of all sorts of other stories. I really like that book. Nobody likes it as much as I do, but that's all right. It's like my little bastard child. I just love that.
When did you write that book?
2006, 7. It's published in 2009.
Did you have the same agent, or?
I don't have an agent. Dumbest thing I ever did was separate from the first agent.
The Flamingo agent?
Flamingo agent, who was a great agent, but he and I had personality issues. And as somebody else, another writer, pointed out to me, "You idiot. Agents aren't your friends. Come on." It's one thing you want from an agent, to get you published and get you paid. And that's what this guy did for Flamingo. So
that's one of our questions. Do you have any advice to people writing now who want to get published, like what to do, what not to do?
if you get an agent, don't dump them.
Is it hard to get an agent?
Much harder to now than it used to be.
Really?
One, because there's so much stuff being published now, people don't try to get major publishers to do it. And the agents themselves are dealing with a constricting publishing market that is paying less and less money to writers. And so the agents themselves are more and more selective about who they actually think they can sell. When I got published in '97 for Flamingo, it was a very different publishing market than it is today. And first-time writers, very difficult. Excuse me. Writers who have had 3 or 4 books that mediocre find themselves publishers just not publishing anymore. Because publishing is an expensive business. And then you got Amazon, who's even undercutting established publishers. My publisher, the one I have now, I mean, you'll buy that book from Amazon, the net to us is about 20 cents. Because the cost of the book, the cost of mailing the book to Amazon to sell, then you go into their discount, and then their commission.
For this brand new book. Wow.
Well, it's about a year old.
But the book itself is not, I mean, you can buy used books too and stuff.
Oh, yeah. And we have ebooks, of course, available. The profit margin on ebooks is actually much higher than print books.
No
Are
way.
Are your books
Wow.
in ebooks also?
All of them are ebooks, yeah.
So you would rather have people buying your ebooks?
If it was a matter simply of money, yeah.
Yeah,
That
because-
ebook is $4.99, and Amazon takes 30%. So what is that? That's $1.50 approximately. That's $3.50 net for this book versus 20 cents for a printed book. So yeah, I'd rather Now I hate ebooks. Every writer hates them. We don't like the form. We don't like the. It's not a real book.
Do you read ebooks at all?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I don't either. But
Neither do I.
And I have a suspicion that most people don't. I mean, they buy them,
Really?
but I think you're more prone to stop reading an ebook than you are a print book.
I think people who are reading ebooks are probably not reading books like this.
Well, yeah, literature, mid-list literature, doesn't sell a lot of ebooks. Ebooks are genre stuff, mysteries and science fiction and stuff like that, and nonfiction. But literary fiction still has a pretty good market in paperback, in printed books. But the money's not good. And, bookstores have this weird history. Bookstores can order any books they want, and they don't have to pay for them. They hold them for 2 months, and if they don't sell something, they return it. So my publisher can send out to a distributor 1,000 books. He doesn't know what's selling what, when. And then 9 months later, he can get back 800 of those books.
Wow.
All been picked over and looked at. Covers are torn, fingers are smudged, things like that. And so you just eat up a lot of your overhead is just down the toilet. So advice for young writer or any writer, don't do it. One, I don't need the competition. None of the other writers I know, we don't want competition. No, we're brilliant enough. We don't need other people to be good. We want people to buy our books, not your books. It's very difficult. And I got lucky. I have a small Iowa publisher, Ice Cube, and he puts out a great-looking book. That's a great-looking book.
Yeah, it has a nice feel. I like the cover.
Now, what can these little darlings want, possibly? You want to go outside and do your business? Come on. Oh, come on, let's go. Ooh, go chase dogs. Go bark. No, I take it back. I love those dogs. And Bobby sleeps with us every night, and he's just sweet as can be. He's been on medication for 11 years, and he's just doped up, and he's just... Anyway. So, you asked one question, and it's now 7:10.
This is a beautiful book. Do you do you design your own covers and?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's 3 different photographs
Really?
put together. It's at the Coralville Center for the Performing Arts.
Oh.
And I actually hired, my wife loves this story, I actually hired an 18-year-old model to spend 3 hours naked on stage while me and a photographer took 180 pictures.
Wow.
Wow.
And she,
Yep, there. Oh, and there you can see this.
and the thing about that is,
Cool.
Yeah.
the very last scene, what I want to do is reproduce the very last scene. That's the very last scene of the book itself. A naked woman on stage playing a piano. And in a theater, overheated. Now, what you off to the side is a couch with a naked man that she's just had decadent, barbaric, enormously satisfying sex with on the stage of a movie theater in front of a giant blue screen. And he wants her to play the piano for him. And he's wheeled the piano in there. And it's an old, like, giant movie theater that in 2 days is going to be torn down for urban renewal. And the last act in the theater is that. Anyway, so I wanted to reproduce that, and that's the image that I came up with.
Well, I personally, am drawn to books by covers. So,
Well,
It's
do you think about that when you?
oh, absolutely. I mean, I had the cover for Flamingo. The original cover that I saw was brilliant, and I had to go back and rewrite the book to include a description of a photograph that actually represented the cover that they had drawn, and then they ended up not using that cover.
Oh, did you have to revise your book again then?
No, I left it in there.
Yeah, this has been going for 37 minutes.
How's your battery?
Well, it's not dead.
This was the
so.
reader's copy cover, which I liked much better than what they originally came up
I
with.
do too.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Wow, that's...
no.
So is this what you sent out for... Oh, yeah.
For
When I
review
lived in
copies.
Chicago, the person who lived in my apartment before me was a book buyer at a bookstore, and we would get all the advanced editions.
This was an advanced
Very
reader's copy,
thrilling.
and I love that cover. And they ended up with something very different because they sent it around to look at National Barnes and Noble and Borders. All had an input. Didn't care for this or that. Cover designs were a committee decision, and what they came up with eventually on Flamingo was pretty bad. And the thing is, the British edition of the Fireworks, which became the sort of a version of the American paperback. I don't know what version. Do you have the paperback version?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. See the.
Do you have a curfew or anything?
Not really. I still have to do some work tonight, but it is 7:13, and I don't want to take up too much of his time.
Now compare this. They could have worked on making it a little darker. They could have done some things with this cover. With this,
Oh,
there's no
wow.
comparison.
No.
And then the British got it, and they did this with it.
I like that better than that.
Oh yeah. And so when the American publisher, paperback publisher, saw the British, they changed their paperback cover to closely match this one.
Huh.
But the British was much better than the American, and Advance was much better than the final.
Wow.
So one of the great things about working on a small person like Steve, like Simpkin that I have now, is that he lets me basically design the covers. And you saw the cover for A Good Man.
I don't remember it.
Oh, it's light blue.
Oh, and the guy. Oh, that's you and your son on the front. I read about that.
Where is my paper bag? It's at the bottom of my backpack. Oh, here it is.
There on the beach.
Here's the.
Oh yeah. Yes. Yeah, I like that cover a lot.
See, that comes from this photograph.
Oh, cool.
That's my son.
Wow.
He was about 2 years old.
Oh my
And,
gosh.
and if you read A Good Man, that image comes up 3 times in the story as a memory of the main character. So Steve liked that. He let me put that together. He's let me design the cover of my new book, which is coming out in the spring, which on Facebook, you can see that cover on Facebook now.
What's the name of that book?
The Education of Nancy Adams,
Okay.
a high school teacher.
Are you done? You're done with it.
I'm done. We're doing the formatting and getting it ready to go. April of 2014.
Did that have a different name at first?
It was going to be The Education of Nancy Flynn, Teacher. I mean, this is a book I've rewritten 10 times.
Okay, because you know Courtney Bouvier?
Yeah, her Facebook thing is
Teacher.
Teacher. Trust me, nothing to do with that.
Oh, okay, because I was like, teacher, that's such a weird coincidence.
No, that was my title 15 years. I wrote the first draft of this new book 15 years ago.
Okay.
That was the first, because it was the guy in the class, teacher. Courtney used to worked with my wife.
Oh, wow.
She was an undergraduate academic advisor
Okay.
until she retired. So Courtney gets no credit for this.
Sorry, Courtney.
Now, you know what's interesting? This was published in like 14 different languages, not this one, 14 different languages, and the covers are all different.
Cool.
But, boy, the French cover.
I had no idea they changed covers for different countries.
Well, Harry Potter.
Oh.
Yeah, totally different in
Oh.
like in England and Spain. Like
Oh my
each country has
gosh.
their own. Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense.
Isn't that weird?
That would bug me though, I think.
It's kind of cool though.
Yeah.
Wow. Wait, what is this? French? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it's so sultry.
I've got all the covers in there. And the Scandinavian cover, the German cover, the Japanese cover is just totally weird because they turn Abraham and Louise into blonde American children.
What?
What? And they're Korean?
Oh.
Wow, this is interesting.
Flamingo. It's not Flamingo Rising, it's just Flamingo. Les Figaro. Avec Flamingo. See, it's just Flamingo. That's so funny.
Mm-hmm. How do they do that?
Oh, it has a nice book smell.
I'm like a new book.
Well, it's more of that old book smell.
Oh yeah. That kind of inky smell.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I like that smell.
I feel like we've done a good job of covering a lot of the writing stuff.
Yeah, that's true. We don't have our places yet. But
Yeah.
yeah, because that's the rest of it would be interesting, but.
Aren't you glad you came over?
Who knew? I had no idea.
What is this? I think this is Dutch. have no idea what this is.
Führerzauber. That looks German.
No.
I like that.
This is the. I think this is the.
Oh, I like this.
This was the French paperback.
Oh wow.
I think this was German here.
Does your
De
agent
Flamingo?
determine that? Or
Is it? I don't know for sure.
Don't think it was. Really?
I sort of like that, but
Wow.
that
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
and here is the Japanese cover.
Oh my god.
Oh my
And those are the
gosh.
kids.
Yeah.
Wow. It reminds me of
And it's so little.
it's like
It's so
anime.
little.
Yeah.
So
Well, now
covers. Yeah. There's no explaining the taste in covers.
No. When you have one book made into a movie, I was wondering if then does that kind of affect your future writing, in that you're thinking, oh, maybe this will be a movie, you know?
My favorite rejection for Flamingo was a guy who wrote a long note. At the end of it, he says, "This is a wonderful story, well written, but I see it on a movie screen and not in a bookstore."
What?
Interesting.
For Flamingo?
Yeah.
Wow.
Does it affect the way you write? No.
So you don't write thinking, oh.
No.
Do you
This
think
is
that
dialogue.
you're
This is almost unfilmable because it's absolutely psychologically internal, and I would love to see somebody try, but I don't think they can do it. The one that ought to be a movie is A Good Man. Duh, I worked that back in again. That's a great movie material, but that's just secondary to the fact that it involves the supernatural and the second coming of Christ, and or maybe not, because the whole point of the book is the drunk radio DJ, talk show host, is told about the second coming, and he doesn't believe it because he's there in midnight in a hurricane, and a black preacher shows up at his radio station at midnight, and he doesn't know how to respond. And then the more the story develops, he thinks he's figured it out. The second coming that this preacher's talking about requires the death of somebody to make it happen. And he thinks he's figured out who has to die. The problem is he loves the person who has to die to make the prophecy come true. There is no second coming without the death of this person. And the narrator, the main character, Harry Ducharme, has a dilemma. I don't care about the second coming. I don't want this person to die. That's the thrust of the book.
It sounds kind of Southern Gothic as well.
It's very clearly influenced by Flannery O'Connor. It is very light in a lot of places. It's funny in a lot of places. But because the guy's a drunk, you're never quite sure how the reader's supposed to take it. Because his judgment is impaired, even though the preacher, the black preacher that shows up, hands him a glass of water. Harry Ducharme has a vodka tonic, and orange juice and everything else on his front of him, and this guy asks for a bottle of water. Harry hands him the water, and the guy says, "No, this is for you." And it's at that point Harry never has another drink. It's a really well-written book, but big damn deal, nobody cares. Which is the part of the interesting thing about that book is that Harry's dilemma is he's a radio talk show host and he never knows who's listening because nobody calls in to his program, but he's broadcasting. And as I was writing, I think that's the perfect metaphor for being a writer. You're just talking into a void. And you very seldom ever get any response back, but you just assume that somewhere out there, somebody's